Captain Jake Morrison stood at the command deck of Luna Station, watching the strange ship approach Earth's moon. The vessel looked nothing like human technology, with its smooth purple hull and glowing blue lines running across its surface. 4. 3 days now the alien ship had been sending signals that Earth's best scientists were trying to decode. Jake felt his heart beating fast as he realized this moment would change everything for humanity. Dr. Lisa Bennett rushed into the control room holding a tablet with translation software. She had been working without sleep since the signals started coming in. Her team had finally broken through the alien language patterns. The message was clear and simple. The aliens wanted to talk. They called themselves representatives of something, called the Galactic Council. Jake opened the communication channel and spoke slowly into the microphone. Within minutes, a holographic image appeared in front of them. The creature standing before them had gray skin, 4 arms, and large black eyes. It wore flowing robes that seemed to change color as it moved. The alien spoke in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. Ambassador Zixstar of the Valonian Empire introduced herself to the humans. She explained that Earth had been watched by the Galactic Council for many years. The council included thousands of worlds and hundreds of different species. They had been waiting for humans to develop space travel before making contact. Now that Earth had stations around the moon, the time had come for formal introduction. News spread across Earth within hours. President Alex Carter called an emergency meeting with world leaders. Jake Morrison was ordered to return to Earth immediately to brief the government. As his shuttle descended through the atmosphere, he could see crowds gathering in every major city. Some people celebrated while others protested in fear. In Washington, Dr. Lisa Bennett presented her findings to a room full of politicians and military officers. The Galactic Council controlled most of the known galaxy. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of anything humans had developed. They had weapons that could destroy entire planets and ships that could travel between stars in days. Instead of centuries, Colonel Ryan Hayes listened carefully to every detail about the alien technology. As head of Earth Defense Force Tactical Planning, he needed to understand what humanity was dealing with. The aliens had energy shields that could stop any human weapon. Their ships could appear and disappear instantly using something they call quantum folding drives. If they wanted to destroy Earth, there was nothing humans could do to stop them. Ambassador Zixstar returned the next day with a formal offer from the Galactic Council. She materialized in the United Nations building using transportation technology. That left human scientists speechless. The aliens spoke to the assembled delegates with what seemed like barely concealed boredom. Earth would be granted probationary membership in the Council, but only in a very limited role. The terms were insulting, but carefully worded to sound generous. Humans would be assigned to mining operations on dangerous worlds where few other species wanted to work. They would clean and maintain space stations in toxic environments. They would handle waste disposal and basic construction projects that required no real skill or intelligence. In exchange, Earth would receive basic medical supplies and protection from hostile species. Dr. Lisa Bennett translated the fine print that the aliens had glossed over. Humans would have no voting rights in the Council. They could not own property outside the solar system. Any technology they developed would become property of the Council. Earth's population would be limited to prevent overcrowding. Most importantly, humans could never advance beyond their assigned role without specific permission from Council leadership. President Carter asked for time to consider the offer. Ambassador Zixstar agreed, but warned that rejection would mean Earth would remain isolated forever. The Council would place a barrier around the solar system preventing any human space travel beyond the moon. No trade or contact with other species would be allowed. Earth would be left alone to develop at its own slow pace, while the rest of the galaxy moved forward without them. That night, Jake Morrison met with Colonel Hayes and Dr. Bennett in a secure room beneath the Pentagon. They reviewed everything they had learned about the aliens and their offer. The Galactic Council clearly saw humans as primitive creatures barely capable of simple manual labor. They expected humans to be grateful for any opportunity to serve their betters. Dr. Bennett had been analyzing the alien technology and found something interesting. The council representatives seemed surprised by human questions of their equipment. They acted as if no species had ever asked for technical details before. Their answers suggested they did not fully understand their own technology, but simply used what previous generations had built. Colonel Hayes pointed out that the aliens showed no curiosity about human achievements. They dismissed Earth's space program as crude and primitive without asking how humans had developed it so quickly compared to other species. They seemed to have already decided that humans were only good for dangerous manual work. Jake Morrison realized that the Galactic Council was making the same mistake that powerful nations had made throughout human history. They were so confident in their superiority that they failed to properly evaluate their opponents. The aliens saw what they expected to see rather than what was actually there. This blindness might be humanity's only advantage in the challenges that lay ahead. 6 months after Earth joined the Galactic Council, Captain Maria Rodriguez found herself standing on the surface of Kepler 442c, watching her human crew work in conditions that would kill most other species. The planet's atmosphere contained sulfur, compounds that burn through standard protective gear within hours. The gravity was twice that of Earth, making every movement exhausting. Radiation from the nearby red dwarf star caused electronic equipment to fail randomly. The Council had assigned humans to mine rare crystals from deep underground caverns on this toxic world. Previous mining operations using Zentarian and Rigelian workers had failed completely. 3 different species had attempted the job over the past century. Each time the workers either died from exposure or went insane from the constant danger and isolation. Council Overseer Quinder had made it clear that he expected the humans to fail just like all the others. He had given them minimal equipment and supplies, assuming most would not survive the first month. The aliens seemed almost pleased by the prospect of human casualties, as if it would prove his point about their weakness and stupidity. But something unexpected happened in those underground tunnels. Instead of breaking under the pressure, humans began to adapt in ways that surprised everyone, including themselves. Engineer Tony Kim had grown up in the coal mines of West Virginia before joining the space program. He looked at the alien mining equipment and immediately saw ways to improve it. The standard Council drilling machines were designed for species with 4 arms and different sensory organs. Tony modified them to work better for human hands and eyes. He added backup systems that activated when the main equipment failed from radiation damage. Most importantly, he developed a new cooling system that used the planet's natural sulfur compounds instead of fighting against them. Within 2 months, human mining operations were producing 3 times more crystals than any previous attempt. The underground caverns that had driven other species to madness became comfortable workspaces for humans who were used to dangerous industrial environments. The constant threat of cave-ins and toxic gas leaks reminded many workers of similar conditions back on Earth. Dr. Nina Walsh had been assigned to monitor the psychological effects of long-term exposure to the planet's harsh conditions. Her reports back to Earth described something remarkable. Instead of developing the anxiety and depression seen in other species, humans were actually becoming more focused and efficient under stress. The reason became clear when Nina studied human evolutionary history. For millions of years, humans had survived by adapting to hostile environments and working together under extreme pressure. The challenges of Kepler 442c were not fundamentally different from those faced by early humans in ice ages or volcanic regions. Back on Earth, Admiral Seth Brooks received weekly reports from mining operations across the galaxy. Every single human assignment was exceeding expectations by massive amounts. Operations that the Council expected to fail were not only succeeding but setting new productivity records. On the water world of Proxima 7, human crews were extracting valuable minerals from ocean floors that other species could not reach. The high pressure and corrosive seawater that had defeated previous attempts meant nothing to humans who had been diving in Earth's oceans for thousands of years. Dotting the asteroid fields of the Vega system, human pilots were successfully mining rocks that other species considered too dangerous to approach. The complex three-dimensional navigation required in dense asteroid fields came naturally to humans who had evolved to move through forests, canopies, and mountain terrain. The Council had assigned humans to these impossible jobs, expecting them to provide justification for removing Earth from membership entirely. Instead, they were getting results that made other species look incompetent by comparison. This created a problem that High Chancellor Vortic had not anticipated. Overseer Quinder sent increasingly frustrated reports to Council headquarters. He complained that humans were somehow cheating or using hidden technology to achieve their results. When Council inspectors arrived, they found no evidence of deception. The humans were simply working harder and smarter than anyone expected. The truth was becoming obvious to anyone willing to see it. Humans possess qualities that the Galactic Council had never encountered before. Their ability to function under stress improved rather than degraded their performance. Their tendency to modify and improve equipment instead of just using it, as design led to constant innovation. Most importantly, humans seemed to thrive on challenges that broke other species mentally. Where aliens saw impossible obstacles, humans saw interesting problems to solve. The very traits that made them appear primitive to the Council were actually sophisticated adaptations developed over millions of years of evolution. Captain Rodriguez noticed a change in how other species treated her crews. At first, the alien supervisors had been condescending and dismissive, expecting the humans to fail quickly. Now they watched with growing concern as human productivity continued to climb month after month. Engineer Tony Kim had become something of a legend among the workers on Kepler 442c. His modifications to mining equipment were being studied by alien engineers who could not understand how such simple changes produced such dramatic improvements. Tony just smiled when they asked for explanations, knowing that his grandfather had been making similar improvements to machinery for decades. Dr. Mina Walsh realized that the Council had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had judged human civilization by its technology rather than its people. A species that could build cities in deserts and grow food in frozen wastelands was not going to be stopped by harsh conditions on alien worlds. The mining operation on Kepler 442c had become a symbol of human determination that worried Council leadership. If humans could succeed in the most dangerous assignments, what would happen when they were given easier tasks? The answer to that question would determine the future relationship between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. Commander Beth Turner stared at the swirling purple clouds of the Maelstrom Nebula, knowing that dozens of alien ships had been lost in those deadly storms. The Council had assigned her human salvage team to recover ancient, precursor technology from a derelict vessel deep inside the nebula. Every previous attempt had ended in disaster, with entire crews disappearing without a trace. The nebula contained electromagnetic storms that could fry ship systems in seconds. Gravity wells appeared and vanished randomly, crushing anything caught in their path. Worst of all, the nebula seemed to have a mind of its own, actively hunting ships that tried to navigate through it. The Council expected the humans to die, quickly adding their ship to the growing graveyard. Inside those purple clouds, Beth had grown up sailing boats through hurricanes off the coast of Florida. She understood that fighting against natural forces was usually futile, but finding ways to work with them could lead to survival. As her ship entered the nebula, she ordered her crew to shut down all active sensors and navigation systems that might attract the electrical storms. Instead of trying to power through the chaos like previous expeditions, Beth let the ship drift with the natural currents inside the nebula. She used passive sensors to detect changes in the electromagnetic fields and adjusted course to avoid the worst disturbances. When gravity wells appeared, she used them to change direction rather than fighting against their pull. The technique worked better than anyone expected. Within 6 hours, the human ship had penetrated deeper into the Maelstrom Nebula, than any vessel in recorded history. They found the ancient precursor ship exactly where Council records indicated, but in much better condition than expected. The electromagnetic storms that destroyed other vessels had actually preserved the derelict by preventing scavengers from reaching it. Dr. Carl Fisher led the boarding party that entered the ancient vessel. The precursor ship was over 50,000 years old, built by a civilization that had vanished long before the current Galactic Council existed. Their technology was legendary, but completely beyond the understanding of modern species, who could barely operate the few precursor devices that had been recovered. As soon as Carl stepped aboard the ancient ship, something extraordinary happened. The dormant systems began to activate, responding to human presence in ways they never had for other species. Lights came on in corridors that had been dark for millennia. Computer terminals displayed information in symbols that somehow made sense to human minds, even though no human had ever seen them before. Chief Engineer Dana Price examined the ship's power systems and propulsion drives with growing excitement. The precursor technology was not just more advanced than current galactic standards. It was fundamentally different in design philosophy. Where modern alien technology relied on rigid programming and predictable systems, precursor devices seemed to adapt and evolve based on the needs of their users. The breakthrough came when Dana tried to interface directly with the ship's main computer. Other species had attempted similar connections in the past, but the precursor systems had remained completely unresponsive. When Dana placed her hand on the interface panel, the ancient computer immediately began downloading information directly into her mind. The experience was overwhelming but not painful. Dana found herself understanding principles of physics and engineering that human science had not yet discovered. The precursor civilization had developed technology that worked with natural chaos rather than trying to control it. Their ships could navigate impossible conditions by adapting to them instead of fighting against them. Back on Earth, General Paul Martin received the first reports from the Maelstrom Nebula with a mixture of excitement and concern. The human salvage team had not only survived their impossible mission, they had recovered intact precursor technology and established communication with ancient computer systems. This success would certainly get the attention of Council leadership. Dr. Helen Brooks and Dr. Kevin Shaw worked around the clock, analyzing the data transmitted from the precursor ship. They discovered that human neural patterns were somehow compatible with precursor technology in ways that no other known species could match. The ancient civilization had apparently designed their systems to work with minds that thought in chaotic, unpredictable patterns. The implications were staggering. Every other species in the galaxy thought in logical, organized ways that made them predictable and easy to understand. Humans were different because evolution had forced them to be creative and adaptable in order to survive. This same mental flexibility that made humans seem primitive to the Council made them perfect operators for precursor technology. Commander Turner spent 3 days exploring the ancient ship with her crew. They found weapon systems that could destroy planet storage devices that could hold the knowledge of entire civilizations and communication arrays that could reach across the galaxy instantly. All of it responded to human commands as if it had been waiting 50,000 years for the right species to find it. The most important discovery came when Dr. Fisher accessed the ship's historical records. The precursor civilization had faced a crisis similar to what the current galaxy was experiencing. They had grown too comfortable with their superiority and stopped adapting to new challenges. When a threat emerged that their rigid thinking could not handle, they had been destroyed despite all their advanced technology. The precursors had built their final ships, specifically to find and assist a species that thought differently than they did. The technology was designed to work only with minds that could embrace chaos and uncertainty. They had hoped that such a species would succeed where they had failed and prevent the galaxy from making the same mistakes. Dana Price realized that the Council was repeating the same errors that had destroyed the precursors. Their rigid hierarchy and predictable thinking made them powerful, but also vulnerable. They could not adapt to truly unexpected threats because their entire civilization was built on maintaining order and control. As the human salvage team prepared to leave the Maelstrom Nebula, they carried with them technology that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. More importantly, they carried knowledge that the Council had fundamental weaknesses that could be exploited by anyone creative enough to think outside established patterns. The ancient precursor ship powered up its engines for the first time in 50,000 years and followed the human vessel out of the nebula. Its systems had bonded with human neural patterns and would only respond to human commands. The Council had expected the humans to die in the Maelstrom, but instead they had gained access to the most powerful technology in galactic history. Beth Turner smiled as she watched the purple clouds of the nebula fade behind them. The Council thought they understood what humans were capable of, but they were about to learn that their biggest mistake was underestimating a species that thrived on proving others wrong. Council Intelligence Director Morthic reviewed the latest reports from human operations across the galaxy with growing alarm. Every assignment given to Earth's population was producing results that defied explanation. Mining operations were exceeding quotas by impossible margins. Construction projects were finishing months ahead of schedule. Most disturbing of all, humans were beginning to modify and improve Council technology in ways that made alien engineers look incompetent. The director's six eyes focused on a particularly troubling report from Captain Sam Nelson, who had established human colonies in the Kepler 186 system. The planets there had been declared uninhabitable after 3 different species had attempted settlement over the past 2 centuries. The combination of extreme temperatures, radiation exposure, and toxic atmospheric conditions had killed thousands of colonists from various worlds. Human settlers had not only survived in the Kepler 186 system, they were thriving. Captain Nelson had developed innovative solutions for every environmental challenge, using techniques that seemed absurdly simple to alien observers. Underground cities protected colonists from radiation, while geothermal power systems provided unlimited energy. Most importantly, the humans seemed genuinely happy living in conditions that had driven other species to madness. Dr. Lucy Reed had become another source of concern for Council leadership. Her medical research on the frontier world of Tau Ceti 4 was saving lives across multiple species in ways that embarrassed the Council's own medical establishment. The human doctor had developed treatments for diseases that alien physicians had considered incurable using nothing more than Earth plants and basic chemistry. The breakthrough that really worried the Council came when Dr. Reed successfully treated Rigelian wasting syndrome using a compound derived from common Earth mushrooms. The disease had killed millions of Rigelians over the past century, despite the best efforts of the galaxy's most advanced medical researchers. A primitive human doctor had solved the problem in 6 months using techniques that violated every established principle of galactic medicine. High Chancellor Vorthic called an emergency session to address what he termed the human problem. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to discuss the growing threat posed by Earth's unexpectedly capable population. The Chancellor made it clear that humanity's success was undermining the established order and threatening the stability of Council authority. The first major crisis came when the Zephyrian Consortium threatened to withdraw from the Council over trade disputes with the Andromedan Federation. The conflict had been building for decades, with both sides accumulating massive military forces and preparing for war. Previous diplomatic efforts had failed completely, leaving the galaxy on the brink of its first major conflict in over 1,000 years. Council leadership decided to assign human diplomatic teams to mediate the dispute, expecting them to fail spectacularly. The failure would provide justification for removing Earth from the Council entirely and returning humans to their proper place as manual laborers. Ambassador Kate Murphy was given the impossible task of preventing a war between 2 of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. What happened next shocked everyone, including the humans themselves. Ambassador Murphy approached the negotiations with a completely different strategy than previous mediators had used. Instead of focusing on the technical details of trade agreements, she addressed the emotional and cultural factors that were driving The conflict? She spent weeks learning about Zephyrian and Andromedan history and psychology. The breakthrough came when Murphy realized that both species were motivated by pride and fear rather than actual economic concerns. The trade dispute was really about respect and recognition of their civilization's achievements. By acknowledging these deeper needs and creating face-saving solutions for both sides, she managed to broker a peace agreement that satisfied everyone involved. The success of human diplomacy sent shockwaves through the council chambers. Species that had been preparing for war were suddenly working together on joint projects. The Zephyrian Andromedan Peace Accord became a model for resolving other long-standing disputes. Ambassador Murphy found herself in demand as a mediator for conflicts across the galaxy. Military affairs presented an even bigger challenge to council assumptions about human capabilities. Colonel Mike Torres had been assigned to lead peacekeeping forces in the Centauri sector, where the local population had been engaged in civil war for over a century. Previous council interventions had only made the fighting worse by trying to impose order through superior firepower. Torres took a completely different approach that violated every principle of council military doctrine. Instead of conquering territory and forcing compliance, he focused on understanding why the different factions were fighting. He discovered that the century-old conflict was really about resource distribution and cultural recognition rather than territorial control. The human colonel implemented a strategy based on building trust between opposing groups rather than defeating them militarily. He organized joint infrastructure projects that benefited all factions while gradually reducing their reasons for fighting. Within 6 months, the Centauri sector was experiencing its first period of genuine peace in living memory. Council military observers were baffled by Torres' success because it contradicted everything they had been taught about warfare and peacekeeping. The human approach seemed chaotic and unpredictable, but it produced better results than centuries of traditional council methods. Military academies across the galaxy began studying human tactics, trying to understand how such primitive methods could be so effective. High Chancellor Vortic found himself facing growing opposition from council members who wanted to promote Earth's status rather than suppress it. Species that had initially supported keeping humans in menial roles were now arguing that humanity deserved full membership with voting rights. The Chancellor realized that his plan to eliminate the human threat had completely backfired. Intelligence reports revealed that human success was inspiring other species to question council authority and traditional methods. Young aliens were beginning to adopt human approaches to problem-solving and innovation. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained galactic stability for thousands of years was starting to crack under pressure from human influence. The situation reached a crisis point when several council member species formally requested human assistance with their own internal problems. The Arcturian Republic wanted human help modernizing their economy. The Vegan Confederacy asked for human medical advisors to address a plague that was devastating their population. Most alarming of all, the Syrian Empire requested human military advisors to help them defend against external threats. Morthic realized that the Council had created the very problem they had tried to prevent. By giving humans impossible assignments, they had demonstrated human capabilities to the entire galaxy. Species that had never questioned Council superiority were now turning to Earth for solutions that their own leaders could not provide. The intelligence director prepared his final report for Chancellor Vortic, knowing that it would likely end both their careers. The human problem could no longer be contained through assignment of dangerous tasks. Earth's population had proven themselves superior to established Council methods in virtually every field of endeavor. The choice now was between accepting human partnership or risking the complete collapse of galactic civilization. High Chancellor Vortic stood before the assembled Council leadership, knowing that his political survival depended on the success of his final plan to eliminate the human threat. The solution had come from the archive for the most classified Council intelligence files. An extragalactic menace, known as the Void Hunters, had been detected approaching the rim of the galaxy, moving through space in a massive fleet that destroyed everything in its path. The Void Hunters were perfect for Vortex purposes because they had never been defeated in recorded history. 3 different galactic civilizations had fallen to their advance over the past million years. Their ships were immune to conventional weapons, and their tactics were based on pure mathematical logic. That made them nearly impossible to counter. Most importantly, they were due to arrive at the remote Sigma Draconis system within months. The Chancellor's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Earth's defense forces would be assigned to protect Sigma Draconis against the Void Hunter invasion. The humans would be wiped out, completely solving the Council's problem forever. When other species asked why Earth had been given such an impossible mission, Vorthek could claim it was humanity's own request to prove their worth to the galaxy. Admiral Lisa Grant received her orders at Earth Defense Command Headquarters with a mixture of anger and determination. She understood exactly what the Council was trying to do, but she also knew that running away would only delay the inevitable. If the Void Hunters were allowed to establish a foothold in the galaxy, they would eventually reach Earth anyway. The only choice was to fight them now, or fight them later under even worse conditions. The Admiral had access to the hybrid human precursor technology recovered from the Maelstrom Nebula, which gave humanity advantages that the Council did not know about. New ships had been constructed using precursor designs modified to work with human crews. Weapon systems had been developed that could adapt their output based on battlefield conditions. Most importantly, human commanders had learned to think in ways that even they did not fully understand. Captain Rob Clark led the advanced scout fleet that made first contact with the Void Hunters at the edge of the Sigma Draconis system. His ships detected the enemy formation while still light years away from the inhabited planets. What he saw through long-range sensors made his blood run cold. The Void Hunter fleet consisted of millions of identical vessels arranged in perfect geometric patterns that extended across space for thousands of kilometers. The enemy ships moved with mechanical precision that left no room for error or deviation. Every vessel maintained exact spacing and heading, as if controlled by a single massive computer. Their weapons fired in perfectly timed volleys that could overwhelm planetary defenses through sheer mathematical precision. Most disturbing of all, they showed no reaction to the presence of human scouts, as if organic life was beneath their notice. Dr. Gary Stone analyzed the Void Hunter behavior patterns from the safety of a cloaked observation post. The enemy operated according to pure logic without any trace of creativity or adaptation. They calculated the most efficient solution to every tactical problem and executed it with flawless precision. Their strength came from perfect coordination and overwhelming firepower, applied according to mathematical formulas. The weakness became obvious once Gary understood their fundamental nature. The Void Hunters could not adapt to truly random or illogical behavior because their entire operational framework was based on predictable patterns. They had conquered previous civilizations because those species had fought, logically using strategies that could be calculated and countered in advance. Military doctrine was different because it had evolved from millions of years of chaotic warfare against unpredictable enemies. Humans had learned to use confusion, misdirection, and pure randomness as weapons when facing superior forces. The same qualities that made them seem primitive to the Council made them perfect opponents for an enemy that relied on logical prediction. Gary developed what he called the Human Chaos Protocol, based on deliberate unpredictability in all aspects of combat operations. Ship movements would be determined by random number generators rather than tactical analysis. Weapon targeting would switch between different priorities without warning. Most importantly, human commanders would make decisions based on intuition and emotion rather than cold logic. The battle for Sigma Draconis began when the Void Hunter fleet reached the outer planets of the system. Their initial assault followed the same pattern that had destroyed countless worlds before. Massive formations of enemy ships approached populated areas in perfect geometric arrays, while smaller vessels eliminated defensive installations with mathematical precision. Admiral Grant launched the first phase of the Human Chaos protocol by sending her ships against the Void Hunter formation in completely random patterns. Human vessels appear and disappear throughout the enemy fleet using no discernible strategy or coordination. Some ships attacked the largest enemy vessels, while others targeted minor support craft. The pattern changed constantly with no apparent logic. The Void Hunters reacted to this chaos exactly as Dr. Stone had predicted. Their tactical computers tried to analyze human behavior and develop countermeasures, but failed because there was no underlying pattern to analyze. Every time the enemy seemed to understand human tactics, the humans would switch to completely different approaches for no apparent reason. Captain Amy Phillips commanded a squadron of human fighters that attacked Void Hunter capital ships using tactics that violated every principle of space combat. Her pilots flew directly at enemy weapons instead of avoiding them, then changed course at the last second in ways that no computer could predict. They used debris and electromagnetic interference to mask their movements, creating confusion in the enemy formation. Colonel Dan White led ground forces defending the colony worlds of Sigma, Draconis using guerrilla tactics that the Void Hunters had never encountered. Instead of meeting the enemy in open battle, human troops used hit-and-run attacks that struck without warning, then disappeared into the civilian population. The enemy's superior firepower became useless when they could not locate their targets. The turning point came when human forces began capturing intact Void Hunter vessels using boarding tactics that seemed suicidal to any logical observer. Captain Phillips led assault teams that attacked enemy ships from completely unexpected directions, using jury-rigged equipment and improvised weapons. The Void Hunters were helpless against opponents who ignored their own safety and fought with pure emotional intensity. Dr. Stone realized that the captured enemy technology could be turned against its creators because it was designed to work with logical, predictable operators. Human crews began using Void Hunter weapons and ships in ways that their original designers had never intended. The mathematical precision that made the enemy so dangerous became a weakness when humans used their own technology against them in chaotic, unpredictable ways. The Battle of Sigma Draconis lasted 3 weeks and ended with the complete destruction of the Void Hunter invasion fleet. For the first time in galactic history, the extragalactic menace had been not only defeated but annihilated so completely that no trace remained of their million-year reign of terror. Human forces had achieved the impossible using methods that no other species could have conceived or executed. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the last enemy vessel explode in silent fire against the stars. The victory had cost thousands of human lives, but it had saved the entire galaxy from a threat that would have destroyed every civilization in known space. More importantly, it had proven once and for all that humanity deserved recognition as equals, rather than servants in the galactic community. News of humanity's victory over the Void Hunters spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Species that had existed for millions of years suddenly realized that the primitive newcomers from Earth had accomplished what no civilization in galactic history had ever achieved. The extragalactic menace that had destroyed countless worlds and entire star systems had been completely annihilated by human forces using tactics that defied all conventional understanding of warfare. Captain Julie Adams found herself summoned to Council headquarters on the capital world of Galacticus Prime, where representatives from thousands of species wanted to meet the humans who had saved them all. The same aliens who had dismissed Earth as a collection of primitive savages now competed for the honor of hosting human ambassadors and military advisors. The transformation in attitude was so complete that it seemed almost impossible to believe. Political earthquake began immediately after the battle reports reached the council chambers. High Chancellor Vortic faced unprecedented criticism from member species who accused him of nearly causing the destruction of galactic civilization. Through his arrogance and prejudice, the Chancellor, who had seemed untouchable just months before now, found himself fighting for his political survival against a coalition of former allies. Dr. Steve Parker arrived at the Council's main research facility to find alien scientists eager to learn human methods of innovation and problem solving. The same species that had refused to share their technology, where primitive humans were now begging for access to human scientific techniques. Steve realized that the galaxy's entire approach to research and development was about to change forever. The formal proceedings began when Chancellor Vortic was forced to call an emergency session of the full Galactic Council. Representatives from every member world gathered to address what everyone now recognized as a fundamental crisis in galactic leadership. The Chancellor's attempt to eliminate humanity had instead demonstrated that human capabilities exceeded those of every other known species. Ambassador Ellen Murphy represented Earth in the proceedings that would determine the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. She had prepared for months studying the complex political relationships between different alien civilizations. What she found was a power structure based entirely on assumptions that human success had proven completely false. The trial of High Chancellor Vortic became an examination of the entire council system. Species after species testified about how human innovations had solved problems that alien experts had considered impossible. The mining operations on toxic worlds, the diplomatic breakthroughs in ancient conflicts, the medical advances that saved millions of lives, all of it proved that the Council's rigid hierarchy was holding back galactic progress. The testimony that sealed Vortic's fate came from his own intelligence director, Mortic, who revealed the Chancellor's deliberate plan to eliminate humanity through impossible assignments. The alien official described how every human success had been dismissed or explained away rather than properly evaluated. The Council learned that their leadership had been willfully blind to evidence that contradicted their prejudices. Chancellor F. Moran of the Centauran Federation was elected to replace Vortic in a vote that represented a complete rejection of the old order. Her first official act was to formally apologize to humanity on behalf of the entire Galactic Council. The new Chancellor acknowledged that the Council's treatment of Earth had been based on ignorance and arrogance rather than any objective evaluation of human capabilities. President Alex Carter addressed the assembled representatives of galactic civilization with a speech that would be remembered for generations. He spoke not with anger about past injustices, but with hope for future cooperation. The president made it clear that humanity wanted partnership rather than domination, and that Earth's greatest strength was bringing out the best qualities in other species. The new relationship between Earth and the Council was formalized in the policy in other species. The new relationship between Earth and the Council was formalized in the Council was formalized in the policy in the relationship. The Treaty of Galactic Partnership, which granted humanity full voting rights and equal status with all other member species. More importantly, the treaty established new principles for evaluating and integrating civilizations based on their actual capabilities, rather than preconceived assumptions about their level of development. Captain Chris Turner was selected to command the joint human-alien exploration vessel UGS Unity, which would carry crews from dozens of different species into uncharted regions of the galaxy. The ship itself was a symbol of the new cooperation between Earth and the Council, combining human adaptability with alien technology to create something greater than either could achieve alone. The Unity represented more than just technological cooperation. It embodied the new philosophy of galactic civilization. Human approaches to problem solving were being integrated with alien expertise in ways that benefited everyone involved. Species that had been stagnant for centuries were suddenly experiencing rapid advancement through exposure to human methods of innovation. Dr. Parker established the first galactic research institute that brought together scientists from across the galaxy to study human techniques for adaptation and creativity. The Institute's goal was not to make other species more like humans, but to help each civilization develop their own unique approaches to the challenges facing galactic society. The military implications of human success were equally profound. Colonel Torres founded the Galactic Defense Academy on Earth, where young beings from hundreds of different worlds learn tactics that combine logical planning with creative adaptation. The Academy's graduates would form the backbone of a new interspecies military force capable of defending against any threat. Ambassador Murphy worked with representatives from across the galaxy to establish the Council of Equals, which replaced the old hierarchical system with a more democratic approach to galactic governance. The new system recognized that each species had unique strengths that could contribute to the common good rather than ranking civilizations by their technological advancement. The transformation was not limited to politics and military affairs. Human approaches to art, literature, and entertainment began influencing alien cultures in ways that enriched the entire galaxy. Species that had been creating the same types of cultural works for millennia suddenly began experimenting with new forms of expression inspired by human creativity. The economic changes were equally dramatic as human innovations in manufacturing. Agriculture and resource management spread throughout galactic civilization. Worlds that had struggled with scarcity for centuries achieved abundance by adopting human techniques for working with rather than against. Natural systems thought 10 years after first contact, Earth had become the unofficial capital of galactic civilization. Not through conquest, but through the simple demonstration that cooperation was more powerful than domination. The planet that had once been dismissed as a primitive backwater was now home to the galaxy's most important institutions and training centers. The story concluded with the graduation ceremony at the Galactic Defense Academy, where young humans and aliens stood together as equals preparing to explore the unknown regions beyond the galaxy's edge. As they prepared to board the Unity for their first mission, Captain Turner reflected that the Council's biggest mistake had been underestimating Earth. But their greatest fortune was that humanity had chosen to lift up the galaxy rather than rule over it. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for all those who had died believing that some species were superior to others. The galaxy had learned through bitter experience that diversity was strength, and that the greatest discoveries came from the meeting of different minds working toward common goals. The future belonged not to any single species, but to all of them, working together as partners in the greatest adventure of all.